Happy New Year! We're kicking off the new year with something we've been planning for a while, the launch of the How We Roll Gaming podcast.
Woohoo!
Yes! How long have we been talking about doing this?
Roughly about a year
At
or so.
least.
On
At
and off
least.
for a year.
And it really became a thing after we went to Gamer Nation Con earlier this year. And how many times were you guys asked, so what's your podcast about?
At least twice
Uh,
for me.
3 times for me, and I was absent for 2 days, so that was a thing.
So I think that was kind of telling. We we needed to do this.
we had a debut, a soft debut.
Yes. So I'm Daryl,
I'm Nick.
And I'm Robert.
and our mission statement here, it was kind of in the intro, but we just we love role playing games, and we want to give everybody some insight into the games that we love, the games that somebody may not have heard of, some tips and tricks, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to just have fun playing role playing games.
That's one of the biggest things that I always emphasize.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, fun's the reason that you play these things. And there's plenty of RPG podcasts out there. We hope we stick out among the rest of them. A piece of advice from a friend of ours who runs Gamer Nation Con gave us was don't suck. So hopefully we won't.
Well,
But the
make it
main idea
memorable
is
for all
like
of you.
we're not being like some of us know more about one system or another, but we're here to like bring people who may have not have gotten that like experience before to come in and have fun as well.
And
And
just
as
to
we
share
go,
some of our experiences on how we dealt with the game.
yeah, and as we go along, we would absolutely love to hear any ideas for what you guys think that we might want to cover, what you would want to hear us cover. So feel free to shoot us an email at podcast@howwerollgaming.com, and we can take a look at that. One of the features that we have planned in the future, we didn't put one together for this episode, but it might happen organically, is there's lots of podcasts and YouTube channels out there that have RPG horror stories. So there's plenty of those, and they're fun to watch. They're fun to
Very
listen
entertaining.
to. But we're going to kind of flip that script on its head, and we plan to tell some RPG glory stories. When things went super right, or when something happened that
That you never expected.
you didn't expect, the players really impressed you, the GM really impressed you, or just when everything was all said and done, you sat back as a player or a GM and thought, wow, that was awesome.
And you just remember that for a long time to come.
Yep, the stories that make you want to keep coming back and playing
The
RPGs
ones
more.
you want to tell your friend that's like, I don't know if I want to play this. Like, oh, this happened.
Yeah, or you're at work and people who don't even play RPGs, you're like, you got to hear what happened this weekend at
Yeah,
my
'cause
game.
horror stories are good for those who know how RPGs are, and that's not every game, though that's a minority. Glory stories are better for those who want to see kind of the entrance of getting into these games. Like, why
There's
would I
more.
want to do it?
There's more glory than horror in
Exactly.
this genre.
Exactly. So, kicking off our first episode here, Nick, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, on our inaugural episode, we're going to be taking a look at the system that honestly introduced a great deal of us together as a role playing game group and started this years of collaboration that we had. The Star Wars RPG by Fantasy Flight Games, now currently known as Ed Studios.
Right. And this isn't going to be an exhaustive deep dive into the intricacies of the system.
This is the third Star Wars RPG
Right.
system.
And there is on the D20 radio network, their flagship show, the Order 66 podcast, has nearly 200 episodes and counting doing the deep dive. And they are well worth listening to.
We
I would
listen to it.
no, I never listen to the Order 66
I'm surprised
podcast.
they have that
Well,
much
that's
to
it.
talk about.
But we don't want to, we couldn't even scratch the surface of everything that they have covered in those 200 plus episodes, but we just want to give an overview of the system, what we really like, and occasionally what we think might be done better.
And some anecdotes and moments that we've, again, as some glory stories.
And I
Right.
definitely know in the future what you're going to talk about should have been done better, Daryl.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, everybody talks about that should have been done better. but today, even though our group has expanded out to other systems for campaigns and one-shots, the Star Wars RPG is still the backbone of it
It's
all.
where it's where it started.
It's where it started, and we still currently have, what, 4 or 5 campaigns?
At
Going-
least.
At least
Going
as much as
currently.
the other games we have.
Yeah, in addition to the others, we've got 4 or 5 Star Wars RPG campaigns going on. I was talking to somebody at work today and was saying, he was asking about the group and was like, yeah, we have a campaign in this, we have a D&D, we have a Delta Green, we have a G.I. Joe Transformers, we have this, we have that. And we have like 4 or 5 Star Wars campaigns.
Some of them are coming to a close, and we are sort of transitioning more to other campaigns, but that's mainly because we're looking at like really transformative, like bigger campaigns than we did before with Star Wars. Like,
But I think it's safe to say that no matter what happens, we're always going to have at least one Star Wars campaign running.
honestly, if I'm going to be honest, it's probably this 1 to 2 to 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I said at least.
Just me. I have way too many campaign ideas.
Don't we all?
So, very much so. Stuff on games I haven't even touched yet.
But yes, let's talk about the FFG Ed Star Wars game.
So the
Let's.
system itself uses the FFG Edge narrative dice system that has special proprietary dice that represent both the positive and negative sides of the dice pool that you roll for a check. The positive dice represent the character's ability to complete the task. The negative dice represent the difficulty in completing the task. They're all color-coded, and so how many times we do this all the time? You'll often hear players describe the dice or the dice pool by their colors rather than their proper names.
Which is easier, but let's go for them and actual like educate them.
Yeah, and what are they, Robert? Fill us in.
Well, we've got the regular ability die, which is your greens. We've got the skilled die, like what you have your rolls in, which are the yellow. We have what we like to call boost die, which are blue. Those are your positive dice. Then on the opposite end, we have our difficulty dice, which is purple, which can be upgraded or just given as a challenge, which are red die. And then, of course, we have our setbacks, which are black. And then we
But
have
there's one dice above them all.
Of course, the force die, which is white and has light side and dark side on it. And the interesting thing is, on the white one, there's more dark than light.
And rather than numbers, the dice have special symbols on them that indicate positive results, success and advantage, or negative results, failure or threat, that cancel each other out. Success and failure cancel, and advantage and threat cancel. Except for 2 symbols, and we'll get into those in a little bit as they get more advanced.
But the most important factor is that success isn't a binary.
Yes.
Nor the failure. Every success can come with complications caused by threat, just as every failure can come with something advantageous.
Exactly. And my go-to example is always uh, you're in a room, stormtroopers are coming in, you shoot at them, you roll your positive and negative dice, you cancel everything out, and you fail, but you have advantages. So you miss the stormtroopers because you failed your attack. But
But you still fired your blaster.
right, you still fired your blaster, you got advantages, so as the player rolling that pool, you're the one that gets to decide how those advantages are used. Now, there's suggestions in the system, of course, we won't get into the weeds with all of that. But you can look
A
at the
lot of it is GM acceptance.
right, and you go for what is narratively exciting. So, okay, GM, I missed the stormtroopers, but with those advantages that I have left over, can I hit the door controls so the door closes and no more stormtroopers can come in? And that, as a GM myself, I would say that is a perfectly reasonable expenditure of advantages.
It changes the encounter that you're having by reducing the enemies that are coming in, and it's also something that is in precedent from, again, always look to the films and your classic Star Wars. How many times have they done that before?
Exactly.
Many times.
Many, many times. Now, the game itself, or I guess we should really say games.
Technically,
Yes.
yes.
And
Each have different properties, at
yeah,
least in the story type.
and what are
But
those games, Robert?
But if we're describing the system, it goes across all three of them.
Yes, they're interchangeable, but what are those? What are those games, Robert?
Oh, yes. The first game that came out by Edge Studios was what we call Star Wars Edge of the Empire. This is your basic. You're the smuggler, you're the soldier, the mercenary, just getting by in the galaxy like this great war
Bounty
rages on
hunter.
somewhere.
There's colonists.
Crime
Scum
lord.
and villainy.
The people you see in the background of the cantina that get like 5 minutes of airtime and then you never see
Your
them
Han
again.
Solos, your Boba Fett's.
Or more, you're the smugglers that always have to look up to those people because they always get everything. And then, of course, we've got Edge moved on. Okay, what if you didn't want to be a criminal or smuggler? Well, then we've got the Rebellion book, which is
Age of Rebellion.
Age of Rebellion, where you're the soldier, you're the spy, you're the commander, you're the pilot zooming through, shooting TIE fighters and blowing up ships left and right, trying not to get shot out of the sky by a lucky TIE fighter pilot.
You're fighting the good fight. You're the classical hero.
Yep.
You're in the war movie.
You're the Bothans that died to get the
You're hopefully
to the rebel
You're
elements.
hopefully not the cast of Rogue One.
Hopefully not. It could be an interesting story, but hopefully not.
Unless you want that. Unless, as the players, you want that noble
Exactly.
sacrifice at the end.
And then we've got the people like, that's fun and all, but we know what we love to watch: lightsaber duels,
I want to
lightning from
sling.
your fingertips.
I want to
wanna
swing a
be
glow
the
stick.
Jedi. I want to be the lightsaber wielding badass.
And
Well,
that is
Then we've got Force and Destiny, where it's like, okay, you can be a Force sensitive, but you're not gonna just be.
It's in the dark times.
You're not gonna be Master Yoda at the get go. You're gonna have to earn that through, like, you have to find a master, or you have to grow your Force powers, which there are a lot. I will say, Edge Studios really thought about those Force powers, and there's some you wouldn't exactly think about. Of course, you got your move, you got your heal harm, but what if you wanted to, like, manipulate the Earth around you? Or what if you wanted to manipulate droids? Well, we got those. What if you wanted to create an illusionary double of yourself? That's in there too. What if you just want to be the mind trickery person, just make everyone forget you ever saw them?
And there's also the case of, like, this is where things like, what if you don't want to be the good guy?
Yeah, what if you want to be a dark side user, or you want to kill Darth Vader and try to be the new apprentice to Emperor Palpatine? That could be a story. You could definitely do that because Force and Destiny introduced something called morality.
Well, all three of them have a sort of a back and forth sort of system, but Force and Destiny has one that's more binary.
At least in terms of light and dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, each of them has their own specific flavor sub-rule. Edge of the Empire has obligation. You owe someone something.
It could be yourself, it could be your family, it could be a bounty that's on your head. It could be the fact that you were a bit have been a bit too flirtatious with someone, and they're not too happy with you.
Or you could be the guy that has the score to settle, and you'll stop at nothing to get that guy or girl or woman who screwed you over.
And that mechanic, that of the three of them, that one, and we haven't talked about the other two yet, obviously, but of the three of them, as a GM, obligation is my favorite.
Oh,
I mean,
and
we
it
get to
increases
do
the amount
something.
of like options that you can use. It's definitely a story creator, and adds more tension because, especially if like you're the high obligation player in the group, you become like the least favorite of them, but also the storyteller of them.
Because that's
Right.
the big point of these games. It's not you're trying to follow the canon type Star Wars story. No, this is your player character's story. This is about them. This isn't about the stuff happening up on the stage. It's about them in the background, just trying to do their own thing.
The way I have put it to people is, yeah, the movies are there. This is your movie. You're the main characters of this movie. And let Luke blow up his Death Star. You're more concerned with whatever the
You're
plot
more
and
concerned
story
with building.
It's
your
a bigger
settlement,
galaxy than you.
Or you're looking for that great score that'll set you for life.
And
let the movies be the backdrop of your story. Is how I always imagine it. It's like,
because as a GM, we can use that story to influence what's happening in your story, but we'll never put that above your story.
Right. The way I run games, and you've both seen this, you might cross over into the main story or cross paths with one of those named characters at some point, but it's going to be brief, and it's going to be
for a fun, like, hey, I know you.
Hey, you know this guy.
And if at most your story will then bounce off of that encounter and go off in its own direction, more than likely it's just going to cross over that moment like, oh, hey, I know that. As a player, I recognize the moment that I just crossed over.
And that's what kind of makes this game so, since Star Wars is a huge property that everyone knows, it's easy to do that and engage people as a GM to be like, oh, even if they don't know like the intricate lore of Star Wars, to be like, have them cross over, or like hear a bit about this one guy. They'll recognize where they are and feel more connected.
Now, for Age of Rebellion, its personalized subsystem is one that I'm not terribly partial to. You two have used it more successfully than I have. And
I very much like it.
It's good as an addition to the obligation.
It's basically how I use it usually is that it helps me personalize a mission rather than define a mission. Because duty usually deals like your personal obligation to the rebellion, your specialty like sabotage, attack, or like recruitment. It defines how your character is going to approach the mission. rather than defining the mission that you're on.
Exactly. You have an objective, and through this, you have multiple ways to get to that objective.
But if you with duty, and if it's specifically a triggered duty, it would allow a character to be okay. Maybe I don't want to approach this aggressively. Maybe if they have the duty of like recruitment or rescue, they want to take it a lot more cautiously.
Yes, Age of Rebellion made duty, like Nick said, and that is their subset that they made, and that has all the you're looking to sabotage, you're looking to raise the morale of your troops, or you're looking to get that information, or kill that officer or that high value target.
Wet Works is one of them. Where it's like completely like some behind the scenes Jason Bourne stuff.
Yeah.
What? Wetworks is one of them?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of this.
All the stories you could tell.
Yeah.
The way I
And
like to think about
probably will
duty,
at one point.
the way I like to think about duty is like the game Hitman. You have the target and you need to kill the target. But as we all know, there are plenty of ways you can go about killing that target. That's kind of what duty is.
There's plenty of ways to handle the situation, and it's rather than obligation changing the mission. Duty means that like your character can do the mission differently.
And it just occurred to me as we're kind of wrapping up our overview of how everything works, we forgot an important aspect.
We did, didn't we?
We did. And since we're going into Force and Destiny, we might as well go into that important aspect.
Yes. And that would be the Destiny pool.
Yes, the Destiny pool. A player and a GM's favorite little pool.
Yes, it's a wonderful addition. I can't recall having seen any system quite like this in an RPG until I started playing this system.
And I've seen some systems like we've recently played the Fallout system. We've seen it in the Transformers and My Little Pony systems.
And they're good. But
of like different like relative like tools similar to this. But I feel that as of right now, I will definitely say that this was more like the most simplistic but better implemented.
Fun way to do it.
And to put it simply, at the beginning of each session, all of the players, whether they're force sensitive or not, roll a force die, which comes up with 1 or 2 light or dark force pips on it. And
this represents the ebb and flow of light and dark in the story.
And so when you buy a dice set for Star Wars, it comes with little tokens for the Destiny points, a light side and a dark side, and you lay out those tokens according to the roll that the players got. And throughout the game, throughout the session, the players and the GM alike can spend light side points for the players, dark side points for the GMs, kind of as currency to influence what's going on in the game.
Yeah.
But most importantly is when you spend a light side, it becomes a dark side point. When you spend a dark side point, it becomes a light side point. At no point does the pool change its amount.
Yes.
It's leaning one way.
And it's all up to how it started. You could have a Destiny pool of 4, or I remember one time we had a Destiny pool of like 11 or 12.
Yep, it just all depends on how many players and what rolls they get on the dice. And it's a great way to have that flow and that influence. As a player,
narrative flow.
As a player, I can use a light side point simply to upgrade one of my rolls, change one of those green dice that we mentioned to a yellow to increase my chances of success or getting a triumph, which we haven't talked about those two symbols yet. We'll hit those next.
Or inversely, a GM could take the difficulty dice and make it a challenge dice if he decides to flip.
Exactly. And that's the simplest use of the destiny points. You can also use them to influence the scene. A simple example is you're about to go as a group into a dark space. Oh, do I have a glow rod with me?
You can.
It's not in my inventory, but it's a reasonable minor ask. For a light side point, the GM may allow you to have a glow rod.
Yeah, you can introduce it that way, or say if you were in a fight in a warehouse and you're like, okay, we're in a warehouse, so is there like a hanging container anywhere? And Daryl, Nick, and I always know, we always say, there can be if you flip a destiny point and introduce it into the scene.
Again, and as a GM, you can always decide where said hanging container. Like they could want it over where they think the bad guys are going to be, or it could be over them.
Exactly.
But it's a reasonable ask to put a reasonable object in the scene that has not been introduced.
And GMs can spend the dark side points in similar ways. You have a big bad that's meant to be the recurring big bad of the campaign, and it's session 2.
And he's getting low.
The players have him on his back foot, flip a dark side point, and he escapes.
I'll be back.
I'll get you next time, Gadget!
Basically. Or just as similarly as like the most easy one is like you have like the you wanted this monster that they're fighting to be a little bit more dangerous. Flip a destiny point to make it harder to hit him.
Yeah. And we briefly touched on those last two symbols. On the proficiency dice or the challenge dice, there's an extra symbol on the proficiency called a triumph, on the challenge called a despair.
Now those, unlike the other symbols, cannot be canceled.
Now they bring with them a built-in success and failure that can be canceled, but the triumph and despair effects aren't.
Yeah.
And
the best description for them are like critical
success or critical failure. Something really awesome happens or something really terrible happens.
And then say you get a triumph, but you failed the check. That introduces what we call a narrative triumph, where you can fail, but introduce something critical into the story. Or vice versa.
There's plenty of examples in the book, along with different like examples for specific checks. But ultimately, it's like I think like
if you can think it up,
Stephanie said it the best way. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Yep.
Worst the GM can do is say, no, that wouldn't work here.
Yeah. And I've done that myself before. As the GM, I've said, no, that's not how this works.
Same here. It's like sometimes they ask for something that's like would be helpful, but just doesn't fit for the scene.
Yeah.
Or it's just it's not quite a we win button, but it gets awfully close.
And we will say it's those triumphs and despairs that make the best stories, and we've definitely got some glory stories in the future related to those triumphs and despairs.
A single triumph and a single despair can change like certain entire sessions from like something that was like a bad event into like no, this is a moment of glory.
And all of this is a quick overview of how the system works. Because again, we're not trying to do a deep dive. Hopefully it all makes sense, enough sense to follow.
The main
And
thing is it's a narrative
and
storytelling device.
and that's what I love about this system.
Yes.
That is
Combat is quick and snappy.
And
combat is quick, snappy, narrative, and the focus is on the story. Yes, there are dice rolls because it's an RPG, but those dice rolls are meant to forward the story and meant to help the players and the GM both contribute to and feed that story.
the beauty about putting this system in Star Wars is that there's a lot of lore in Star Wars. You could both what we call canon and legends. And you don't have to set your story in during the Galactic Civil War. You could go to the Clone Wars. You could go before that. You could go after that. It's
You can
almost
do however you
limitless in
want.
what
You
you
could
can do.
be hard canon, just legends, or freeform. It's your Star Wars.
Yeah, you could be the smuggler criminals looking at the plan and do that big heist, or you could just be a bunch of colonists trying to survive on an outer rim planet while the forces around you try to beat you down.
And one of my favorite shorthands that I saw a lot when I first started playing this system was Edge of the Empire. People say, yeah, we're playing Star Wars Firefly.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, the first campaign that I ran in this system unintentionally kind of was Star Wars Firefly.
What you described, yeah.
To the point that one of my players created his character and said, yeah, this is River. And another one of my players, my wife, Stephanie, said, oh yeah, I'm making Saffron. I'm making Yosef Bridge from the Our Mrs. Reynolds episode.
I mean, speaking on that, we're currently playing a system that a game that you're running, Rebel Yell, where your wife is playing a hot rock star.
Yes, because she
based off of the Star Wars Season 1 Visions episode.
Yeah, and it's a fun campaign. She saw that episode of Visions and said, I want to play a hot rock star, and I'm like, man, how are Nick or Robert or I going to come up with a scenario where you play a hot rock star? And then, honestly, inspiration, as you both know as GMs, comes from anywhere.
Oh,
it does.
I know so much.
And, like we have a story for that, but we can't tell that yet
because that's not over.
But I was reading Bono's memoir, and he was talking about, especially after the success of the Joshua Tree, the international travel that he was able to do for humanitarian purposes. He was leveraging his fame and his wealth for humanitarian purposes. And all of a sudden, the light bulb, I won't say it snapped on over my head, it flickered on. And I was like, wait a second. If you have like the equivalent of a local band that's trying to make it big, here on Earth, they go from town to town trying to play, trying to make it big, trying to score that record deal. In Star Wars, the equivalent from going from town to town is going from world to world. And what if this
your tour bus is a starship?
Yeah, your tour bus is, well, you're at the level that the band is at. Mm-hmm. Your broken down tour van, is a starship. And what if, to fit in with more Star Wars flavor, the Rebel Alliance comes to you and says, hey, nobody's paying attention to you going all over the galaxy. because you're this little band that's trying to make it big. Could we prevail upon you to do some work for us occasionally?"
And that's total punk rock style.
And everything just kind of fell into place from there. And, of course, music themed and with the rebellion connection, it's got to be called Rebel Yell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got first introduced to this system, it was on a game that was actually based off an actual video game, Dark Forces. And
The Dark Forces campaign.
I still remember our Dark Forces. It's basically, hey, we're doing the Dark Forces story. We're just taking out Kyle Katarn and putting your characters in there.
Because it's like the only way to replace Kyle Katarn is like a group of players.
And yeah, we just went in it, and it was fun. We definitely have a glory story in there, but we won't say that just yet.
But there's like, I basically ran them through it, and like it was some tough enemies, some tough situations. They but it's like I was like, yeah, I just loved. I grew up playing the Dark Forces game as a kid, and it was like, yeah, I'll just run them through it with a little bit of like extra flair.
Or I remember what I did for my second Star Wars campaign idea is that we were actually just talking around your living room one time, Nick. We were just talking about Batman and DC and just talking about how cool it would be to think of them as like Star Wars characters, and just kept talking and talking until I was like,
yeah, we just kind of just like threw like, how would we make that?
And I was just like, you know what? Challenge accepted. And I made what I called Dark Knights Arise or Dark Knights Rising. And it was just, hey, get your DC character that you like, make it into a Star Wars character, and I'm going to throw you on Corellia because it's basically Star Wars Gotham.
Yep. And it was fun. It was really fun.
It was fun. And then what did he do in session 2, Nick?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're not going to get into stories.
Not the time for that.
But I will say, like, it really put the fear of Condiment Man into me.
And I will
Condiment
say,
King.
And I know what you're talking about, Daryl, but one of those is Nick's fault. Okay?
Okay, both of those are my fault.
But yeah, I love the narrative nature of the system. The way I found it is I was actually in the process. I had thought, hey, you know what? It's been too long since I've played a role playing game. I want to play one again. I want to play Star Wars. The first system, the West End Games system,
D6, yeah.
The D6 system is super easy, super intuitive. I know it like the back of my hand because I had a long running campaign that I was part of that years ago. It's like, okay, it's a nice little system. It's easy to play. So I started planning out that Star Wars Firefly, or what, that one.
It become your Star Wars Firefly-esque.
In that West End system. And then some friends of ours who were players of yours at the time, Nick.
Yep, I know this. I know this story well.
They were over at our house and they said, hey, the guy that runs the Star Wars RPG for us is launching a new campaign. You should join. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And
I remember that day very, very much. You came in with your son, Xander.
Yeah, he came the second time.
Oh, the second time, you're right, yeah.
He came the second time. But the first
they introduced
session,
me to you, and it's like you sat down, and it was like you were interested.
And that first session, I was like, okay, the system is interesting. It's really interesting. And I was still planning on running my game in the D6 system.
Yeah, I think that's when we first really talked for the first time. And I saw like, oh, you know Star Wars stuff, cool.
Yeah, and part of why I was going to run the D6 system for my campaign is my son that you mentioned, who was 13, 14 at the time, was interested in playing it. And I knew that the D6 system was simple. And I was like, rather than trying to teach him two systems at once or
Obviously,
whatever,
yeah.
let me just teach the D6 because I know that one. And it's so easy to teach. Well, he did come along with me to set for the second game.
And that's when I saw that you really dialed in, and well, you can tell that story. But
Yeah, and he was originally just going to sit in the corner.
he had like
He had his
Nintendo.
3DS with him. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was going to sit in the corner and just play, but he kept getting interested in what was going on.
because we were
And
doing a lot of stuff at the time. Like it was like a heist. And there's like someone snuck a grenade out of someone's
there was a
pocket.
heist, there was a race.
The ice, the cake making plan.
Yeah. And he slowly was migrating from the corner of your game room over towards the
Back
table.
when I had a chair in there, it's like just sort of.
And he kept migrating closer and closer and was leaning in and started contributing ideas to us in the group. And you invited him, hey, if you're interested, come back with your dad again next time and bring a character sheet. And the rest, as they say, is history. I scrapped plans for my campaign being in D6, changed it over to this one, and never looked back.
I will say this as my sort of story about this system and how fun and easy it is to get into. I had some friends of mine from high school, like, okay, Nick, you talk about these role playing games and stuff like that that you do on the weekends. It's like, can we try that one time? It's like, oh, sure, awesome. They came over, and so what's your first question? What's a role playing game? And no joke, within 30 to 45 minutes, they had completed their own character sheets and were rolling dice.
Yep.
And honestly, I think I don't want to. I think people have probably done it faster, but I think if someone knows Star Wars, I can get them their character sheet done within at least 45 minutes. If they haven't seen this system before. And rolling dice within the hour.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's a simple system to learn and start. To master it takes like probably two sessions.
Yes, and then for me, I actually got involved with Nick's group online through Discord. Like I hadn't.
This was during the pandemic times.
During the dark times.
During the dark time, the lockup. So I think for a good 2 or 3 months, I hadn't even met Nick in person. I only knew him as the GM over the Discord call. And this was when
I was like, okay, I wanted to keep the group going. It was like, luckily there was other people that made a very comprehensive dice bot for Discord.
Yes, those are great people. Love them.
But and that's what kept this group alive during those times. It was definitely a lot of technical difficulties, but I made it work somehow.
Yes, and when I joined, I had never played the Edge Star Wars game before. I hadn't even played the D6 before, so I had to learn it on the fly in the middle of a campaign that I just joined. And it was so appealing, so easy to learn, so much fun doing it, that I stayed throughout that entire quarantine playing games over Discord. And finally, when it lifted, we were like, okay. Nick was like, okay, I think we're safe to come into my house. And I'm like, bet, I'll be there.
I remember that moment. It's like, I remember being like, you're Robert.
And like, you're Nick. Okay.
It was kind of surreal being like, yeah, I know your voice and I've been talking to you for literal months.
Yeah, it's one of those, you hear the voice and you just get a picture in your head And then when you meet a person, you're like, okay, now I have a face to put the voice to.
Yeah, we had quite a few games going over Discord during
During
those
that time,
times.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
some of them more successful than others.
obviously, but
Yeah.
again, none of us were ready for that. I think literally like we were starting Dark Forces had its first session just like a week before the lockdown happened.
Yeah. And I joined in
Because I
like
remember I saw Betsy for the first time at Dark Forces. And then everything changed.
yeah. And then
And it was like, okay, we're gonna go exclusively Discord. It's like, and we'll see how that works. It's, honestly, I felt the whole system, the whole like meetup group was gonna fall apart at that point. It's like because it was all in person up to that point.
but nope.
But nope, you got new players, and most of us who were there before stuck with you, and you
Again,
can't.
mostly due to the fact that there was a cohesive dice bot done by there's an official Discord for semi-official Discord that has a dice bot that you can add to your Discord channels.
And now you can't get rid of us, Nick.
Nope.
Not that I would want
On,
to.
you know.
You guys are part of my family.
Yep.
And all because of a super awesome system.
A system that's just, and again, we can probably get into another time when we get into the fact that this system actually spun off a spin-off system.
Yes.
That's similar, but open.
Which kind of, takes us on to that next point. We have been waxing nostalgic and poetic about everything that we love about this system, and Robert hinted at this earlier. It's not a perfect system.
No system's perfect.
No system is perfect. I don't expect any system to be perfect. But what's another big component of Star Wars? The wars in the stars.
Mm-hmm.
The space combat, ships,
Yeah, that's
fighters and freighters and
Now, admittedly,
Star Destroyers.
when initially it came out, how they handled it was pretty good. Not perfect. It honestly it was more freeform that I liked, but definitely not as mechanically inclined.
There are a lot of fiddly bits to space combat.
Yes.
In the system. And those fiddly bits can be really difficult to keep track of.
Unless, especially in like multi types of ships, like fighters versus freighters versus big cruisers and stuff like that.
Yeah, it can be really tough to keep track of, but
I do admire how they tried to do that. They still tried to keep the narrative components, but
yeah,
the larger it goes, the more stretched the narrative becomes.
Because I know I've never tried it myself. I usually use space battles as kind of background scenes, but I know you, Nick, you've done a few space battles yourself. How did you kind of feel about that?
Honestly, like I do try to keep like larger space battles are like in the background and keep it closer to like freighter starfighter stuff.
Yeah.
Same.
That way it's more like close in, because like once we get to like starships with like 120 cannons, that's like, even if you disperse it around like certain mechanics which which bigger shows like Order 66 could go into, it becomes a bit cumbersome.
Yeah, because like in Return of the Jedi, where the A-wing smashes into the Executor's flagship, the whole thing just goes down and blows up. You can't do that in this system because
You can't make
Nah.
that happen mechanically.
that's not a thing you
that
can
is a
do.
narrative moment.
And 2 Fantasy Flight games, Edge Studios credit, when they did create that spin-off game, Genesis, they took everything that works about the Star Wars system, and let's be frank, one of the universal complaints among most players of the system is the ship combat system, the vehicle combat system.
Now, I will also say that I personally don't have as many complaints, but I can understand a lot of the complaints, especially as it goes bigger.
And for that spin-off game, Genesis, they streamlined ship and vehicle combat tremendously.
And it does, from what you've shared of that and from what I've read of it, it actually made me more interested in doing my dream Starfighter campaign.
Yeah, and the previously mentioned and recommended Order 66 podcast did a fantastic episode about converting Star Wars ship combat to Genesis ship combat. Now, I listened to it, and since I hadn't done any ship combat, vehicle combat in Genesis before, I was kind of getting it, and I was like, that sounds easier, but I'm not sure. And I had the good fortune in 2023 at Gamer Nation Con of playing a game run by one of the hosts of Order 66, GM Chris, of playing in a Genesis Last Starfighter game that he ran that was all vehicle combat, all starship combat. You were in Gunstars through the whole game. And
it sounds like it really works.
It really works. It was a lot of fun. It streamlines things rather than having the 2 different range systems,
Yeah,
for ground and space. It just borrows the same terminology. You're just looking at it from a different scale.
accents are a bit more defined.
Yeah, everything was just more streamlined, and I was like, okay, yes, one of these days I need to sit down and make this conversion. I don't really have any plans in the near future to have.
Like, I'd probably
campaign
work
that
with
is-
you because I would like to do like a short campaign that is just like all just space combat.
Well, that one can't, without saying anything, since we haven't announced it to the players, that one campaign that I was telling you about that I asked about you co-GMing with me,
Oh,
it would be natural to include some ship combat in that. And that's all and in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I can't get spoiled on it.
Nope. But that's really the biggest hurdle that I've encountered with
honestly,
this
like,
system.
again, like, I took people that literally had their first question to me, like, what is a role playing game? And they were making checks within an hour. They didn't stay around because, well, they were big Star Wars fans, but they said like they had a fun time, and like if it was something that they were like into, they would do.
Yeah, and like someone who grew up knowing Dungeons and Dragons, kind of their system, like you got to get over this number to succeed. Getting introduced to this game, where it's like everything has a narrative flair to it. It was like, oh, this is refreshing, just to have something that isn't just you didn't reach the number, so you fail.
It is a binary system.
Yeah.
Failures can be successful or advantageous, and
Yeah, sometimes
and have a consequence.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like you would want to fail, so you fail or try to fail, and it's just a dice decide whether you do or not.
Yeah. It is one of my favorite systems to play.
Yes.
Again, like I feel like that really helped what made this group that eventually became our greater group that became what we are now. It's because of how quick and easy it is. Like get into it. Like swashbuckling adventures, like quick combat, just no like hard fails, but like the excitement whenever someone rolls a dice around the table is what I always love about role
Yeah.
playing games. And this every single like roll in this game is like everyone wants to lean in for. It's like what did it get? What did it get? How
What did you do?
what chance?
Did you get a
Did you
triumph?
hear
Did
it?
you get? Oh,
Did
you
you
got
hear
a
it?
triumph. Oh, you got a despair.
One of
Oh
those.
no.
Oh no! Why was that the roll? Why did you do that?
Everyone's like, oh wait, that does that cancel out? Does that not cancel out? It's like it's each roll feels like everyone's like invested.
And I'll say, as a player, there's nothing more foreboding than you rolling in despair and your GM say, "I'll hold on to that." That.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm gonna be honest. Peek behind the GM screen here. A lot of times when you guys roll a despair, unless I have something immediately in mind, I'll hold on to it because I can't think of anything right then. And as the session goes on, oh, this is going to be good. This is where I can use my pocket despair.
Yeah.
It again. There's also a lot of homebrew, a lot of ideas that we do.
Yeah,
Yes.
and a semi-regular segment that that we hope to do on the podcast when we're talking about a specific system is we're going to include a little bit of homebrew or house rules that we use. And
I have some to add to this, and I think Robert has some to add as
Robert
well.
Yeah,
has a
yeah.
big one, and so
Do you have one as well?
No,
You
yes,
know, I'll
I
go
do.
first.
Yeah, you go ahead, Nick.
I mean, mine's probably the most simple one. If there's a tie between during initiative, you roll for cool or vigilance based on whether or not you're being actively attacked or you're attacking someone. I normally do it. Is like if a player and an NPC have the same initiative roll, I defer to the PC. You're the player characters. This is your movie, so
not to interrupt or interject here, that's something we forgot to mention in describing the system.
Oh, you're
It
right.
has one of my favorite initiative systems
oh, you're
of an
right.
RPG game.
How
Honestly,
could we forget
same
that?
here. Oh, I mean, it's you're right.
So, really quickly, when you roll your initiative, you just roll the positive dice unless there are extenuating circumstances and count the numbers of successes and advantages. 2 success, 3 advantage, what have you. And the adversaries do that too. That
But you
determines
don't.
that
That
determines the
determines.
initiative order. But instead of, okay, Robert rolled 2 success and 3 advantages, and Nick rolled 1 success and 5 advantages. So Robert has that 2-3 slot, and Nick has that 1-4 slot. They are PC and NPC slots. And you can shuffle which player goes in
Exactly.
which PC slot and vice versa
Yeah.
from
On the
round
fly.
to round.
Yeah, I could be the
true tactical goal. Like
Yeah.
people say like D&D has the most tactical. Like no, this is true tactical change.
where it's like first turn, I could be first. The third turn, I could be the fourth PC to go. It's all interchangeable.
It's all
It depends on-
interchangeable, and it allows
Everyone
you,
can discuss it. Yeah.
it allows you to plan and coordinate and create a strategy with the rest of your player group. So you say, oh, I have an idea. And so you go first to set me up for my idea.
Yes. And
And
what
then
I
the
like,
next round, I'm going to go first because that will then be the payoff for my
Yeah.
idea.
And
then
again, also
the
it
other
benefits anyone
rules.
that makes a failed check. Like, say that they do miss their shots. Like, okay, I need to take cover now. Can I take first slot to run into cover because I missed my shot?
Yeah. And then I like the two other rules in initiative.
move fitting
And-
the narrative system.
And since your homebrew rule is the most exciting of them, Robert, let me jump in really quick. Mine is super simple. I had a player once who didn't want to be force sensitive, but wanted a lightsaber,
Mhm.
which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I wanted to reflect the difficulty of not being a force user and using a lightsaber because you're not in sync with the weapon. You haven't attuned to the weapon, to borrow a D&D term. You don't have the force to help you compensate for a massless blade, all of that. So you don't have the reflexes that the force brings you. So for non-force users using a lightsaber, their lightsaber difficulty on a check is automatically upgraded once. There's always the possibility of a despair for a non-force user to use a lightsaber.
Because, like, to borrow an applicable term now that we're in December, you poke your eye out.
You'll shoot your eye out.
And boy, does it hurt.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's my quickie homebrew rule.
I have something similar that I just require them to use. If they're trying to use it, if they have the melee skill, they can use melee, but it will never be as effective. And it's sort of similar, like an upgrade to trying a lightsaber check. We're on scale.
But Robert, your homebrews.
Yes.
We love and
We love and fear your homebrew.
Yes, this is a little homebrew I made up, and then I love it, and my players both love it and hate it. At times, it's like I see the Destiny pool. You got the light and the dark, and there are some instances where your player characters, your players that you're GMing for, just keep flipping all of the light until suddenly you have an entire Destiny pool of dark. It's like, well, okay, we could go through just where I'm clipping this and trying to get it back over back and forth. Or I was like, what if I flip all the dark to light and introduce just something completely major in the story? Something just totally out there, like that really story changing or really dangerous thing. Like, I know the first time I ever used this was in my own home campaign, and these guys were infiltrating a gas refinery on a planet kind of between like 3 warring factions. So they go in, start doing their stuff, until suddenly they all have all dark. And then I just one by one in front of them just flip them each to light. And I just watch their face go, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And then I decided, okay, you're doing your job. You're trying to leave, but you've caused so much damage to this foundry that the other 2 factions are moving in to attack this foundry. And now you're caught in the middle of a major battle between 3 warring factions. While the 3rd faction you were hitting the refinery against brings in one of their Star Destroyers overhead because there's this giant major battle going on. So, yeah, you're going to have to get out in the middle of basically of an official battle. So you're going to have to dodge rockets, grenades, drop ships. Good luck. That's kind of the first time I did it. And then I just was like, I like this. I'm going to make it a home run. I'm going to keep doing it. And then I was surprised how everyone loved it, because at Gamer Nation Con, when I did this, or when Nick and Daryl also did this at their tables, they said their players were like, whoa, that is such a good homebrew. We're going to adopt that.
Yeah, I did not use it at my table, but I mentioned it at my table, and the crew from Houston, they were like, "Oh my god! Oh my god, we're gonna use that."
It's a simple thing for a major effect. And now, whenever I GM, there's two things my players either are wary of me of or straight out try to ban me to do. It's they have to watch the Destiny pool. So they get all dark. I can do something really horrible or really story changing, and they don't like me rolling the critical injuries.
Yes, because you are a beast at crits. But yeah, we hate your crits.
And it's like again, that's just you. That's how he rolls.
For those of you, because we haven't explained this yet, for critical injuries, when you get a critical injury, what we do is we roll a percentile, which is we just roll a D100 and a D10. And whatever that result is, we look it up on a critical injury table, and we say, okay, this is what you get. Like, you could get a minor nick, or you could break your left arm or something. And then
lose the arm entirely forever.
Yes, but that's only if you get multiple critical injuries or your opponents have a certain talent.
Or Robert rolls.
Because percentiles only go up to 100, but if you get more, we can go all the way up to 150. And if you get over 150, it's instant. And yes, I'm known to roll really high on that critical injury table.
Yes, you are.
Betsy still won't let me hear the end of it, how I broke her leg in the first session of my campaign.
But yeah, me and Robert were co-GMing a game currently.
Yep.
So I'm allowing him to use his homebrew, but on sort of the probational idea of like I roll the critical hits.
Yeah, they won't let me roll the criticals.
Yeah,
I will allow him carte blanche on how he uses the whatever we will eventually call this homebrew rule.
Because behind the GM screen, I love how when I see the players doing stuff and they don't realize they're flipping that Destiny pool until one of them is like, no, wait, it's almost dark. We got to be careful. Because it gives them another thing to think about. It's like, okay, we can keep
again,
doing
it's
this.
very different from like years. I think it was the natural evolution of my players migrating to you, Robert, in that they would always like be miserly with the Destiny pool. They'd like hold on to every single light side point.
But now I've given them a reason now.
part of that on my end when I first started playing, I wasn't used to the Destiny pool concept. So I never thought to use those Destiny points. And
we gotta share the one glory moment that you use the Destiny pool, and I think you know which one you're gonna. I think you should share, Daryl.
Which one?
It involves a mini.
Oh,
that one. I wasn't here for this, but I've heard so much about it.
Well,
unless you want to save that for another time.
Well, the only
too good a story not to do that in an episode.
Yeah, we'll save that one because it wasn't so much using the Destiny point expenditure in that was the price to trigger the signature ability.
This is true. Like the real price was paid.
Yes,
we'll get to that.
Yes, we'll come up with a whole episode for relating stories that just
honestly we could bring in like probably most of the regulars for at least one. They can know what story eats.
Though I will say, going back to the Edge system, what I really like, the one thing I really like personally, what they did is they explored planets in the Star Wars galaxy more. They wrote out biographies, kind of how it went. They put places of interest, so it's like, I need a place to go to this, and I don't want to do the original, you're on Tatooine again for the 30th time in the series. Congratulations. It's like, no, How about you go all the way out there to Ryloth, or you go into hut space? What kind of planets do you see there? Or what if you want to go to Slaheron? Or what if you what if you actually want to
That
go to Kessel and try to do that whole Kessel run?
that was part of my introduction into the larger world of homebrew for this system. I started doing write-ups in the FFG Edge
Yeah,
format for planets that they hadn't written up.
I mean
It,
because the system is so simple but complex that you can like respec like all the older stuff. Like anything that shows up, you can pretty easily like sort of like, okay, here's how this would work, and here's how this mechanically would look.
and I apparently was making a bigger splash than I thought I was by doing these write-ups and posting them
I
on
think I
my homebrew
found you by
website.
accident before I even met you.
Well, you couldn't have because I wouldn't have been doing those write-ups before then.
Okay, then, but I think I was like in like at least similar forum grounds with you.
But
They are. Tell them what
but
you did.
well, the
that's
that's another story
a
for another
that's
day.
a that's a story for another day.
But on the official FFG forums when they still existed, I had people coming to me saying, "Hey, I have this planet that I'm using for my game. Can you do one of those planet pages for me?" So, yeah, sure, as long as you don't mind that I post it on my website.
You say,
And
I've only made one planet myself once, and I just love like just making up the story. Like, okay, who lives here? How'd they get here? What's the government like? What places would be well known on this planet? Like, what are the players gonna see and hear and interact with?
I have a planet that I have that I completely homebrewed that I have like not been able to find a good place to use.
I have completely homebrewed some planets, and I have written up existing planets that just don't have
Exactly. Because
write-ups.
you ever seen the Star Wars galaxy map? There are tons of planets or what they call like star objects that
Yeah,
there's just nothing about them. They're completely blank. They just say they exist. So you have like
like
thousands
Star Wars
of
Galaxy
planets that you
is
can just think of.
like anywhere. Like you just point at a location in Star Wars, like there's probably something there.
Because I was like, okay, there's this planet on in between like two great hyperspace routes and a minor one. So I was like, okay, it's definitely going to be a trade world because it's or a trade hub. 'Cause it's just right there. Everyone's going to get to it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this an agri world. It's just full of farmland and it's run by an oligarchy. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
For that first campaign that I ran in this system, I brought in an entire area of space that I had created way back when I was in that campaign in the West End system,
Ah,
because I had, as we were playing, I was like, okay, you know what? These aren't the main characters of the movies, so they're not going to be the ones to defeat the Empire. So, and we had rotating GM duties in that campaign.
yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Not for every session that I run, but for some of them, let me create another big bad space government that they can make a dent against. And so I created I completely stole the name and the leader from the 1980s comic Dreadstar,
Mm-hmm.
but I created the Holy Church of the Instrumentality. It's a religious organization that finds true artificial intelligence to be evil and demonic. So there's no droids, there's no nothing like that. They feel that it's sacrilegious and is an affront to genuine life and intelligence. And their leader was a dark side force user. And so I carved out this whole section of space, and the instrumentality was basically sitting back and watching the Galactic Civil War take place with their own designs to, once there was a winner, that winner was still going to be weakened, and then the instrumentality could make their move
Ah.
to try to take over the galaxy.
Yeah.
And going off of that, like, we took you and me, Daryl, are currently running a game based off of a West End Games campaign, the Far Orbit Project, as a
Right.
co-GM group.
Right. And, spoiler alert, for my homebrew website, I'm in the process of doing a conversion of that campaign book to this system. I've been working on it for a while, but...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the good thing about this game is, like Daryl said, you're not going to be the ones fighting the Empire. You're not going to face Vader in one-on-one combat, but it's like...
If you do, the system makes certain that, like, that...
Oh, yeah. The system has made Vader a powerhouse. Like, you will die if you face Vader, unless, as we'll know in the later Glory story, you think up a MacGuffin to kind of get you out of it.
Right.
But in this game, it's
basically, it's like, it's for the stats for Vader, which do exist, and normally in a game, it's like, if you can stat it, you can kill it.
Their initial stats for Vader
are pretty tough.
Yeah.
Well, their initial write-up for Vader was, "It's Darth Vader, run."
Yeah, because they were
basically it's hallway at the end of Rogue One Vader.
And you're the soldiers. But yeah, like I was saying, it's not going to beat that, but you could be fighting one of the many Moffs in the Empire, or you could be fighting a Crime Lord or a pirate gang.
A sentient piece of armor that can throw a ship around.
Don't bring that guy up. Or like Daryl said, some type of organization, religious, corporate, it could be anything. You could fight a corporation for all I know. I know that's many people's little dream of just fighting a corporation.
A bounty hunter that has a beef with you, your ex-lover, whatever. It's like, the story is your story. This is your Star Wars story.
I mean, heck, I had my players fight a Sith spawn Wampa once.
I threw the zombie stormtroopers from the Death Troopers novel at my group once. And it worked out that the player who was playing the pilot of the group at the time, she had, I worked with her, and she had pulled me aside and said, like, "I'm loving the game. I just don't have time to commit to it anymore.
Yeah.
So can you write me out, please?" And so I wrote her out in that session, and the last they saw of her, she was being swarmed by a group of zombie stormtroopers. They never saw a body. So it's entirely possible that had she ever decided to come back,
I mean, that's the rule. That's a rule.
So
you gotta see a body.
So it was. There's so much versatility to this system. I love it so much, and
it really works off the idea that of all the stuff you love about Star Wars. It's fun, it's campy, it could be silly, it could be serious, it could be scary, it could be exciting.
It could be dramatic.
Yeah, there's so much to do with
it. There's no wrong Star Wars.
And now that, I'm working on homebrew for the High Republic era because I love that era. Reading the books.
Yeah, so, and I've always wanted to do one with like the Old Republic, like in
I've
like
worked on some ideas for that too, and currently, our current campaign, Robert, we're decided to do our own like post sequel era content.
Exactly, and in my own campaign with at my place, I decided, because one of the eras I really like is the After Endor, the whole Imperial
Yeah.
Warlord era. I was like, I want to do a campaign in that. You're just a group of people trying to survive this fractured galaxy with like these many Imperial Warlords with a fledgling
Again,
republic trying to get
the,
control.
there's no. The galaxy of Star Wars is so large, both in terms of scale and time, that you can set it anywhere, anytime, any place, anywhere, and there's always a one place that you can carve out that's the story that my players would do.
Yeah.
And then
And
this
the system
system,
is encourages you to explore, and these are your. It's a narrative system, so these are the big damn heroes.
Wrong franchise,
No, I know that.
but I'll allow it. I'll
Yeah,
allow it because when Robert was describing his dark side flip, I was like,
yeah.
he could throw something interesting at us and define interesting. Oh God, we're all gonna die.
and I will say this system, at least for me, it was a great system to start with. It helped me get used to it and understand it to when we moved on to those other game systems.
Yeah, honestly, it helped. Honestly, it's as again I said that like I took people that didn't know what a role playing game system was, and they were getting into it, and their only issue was like, yeah, we're just not big Star Wars fans. But it's like, but they had a good time for a good couple hours. It was like, yeah, we can see where this can go and how this could work.
And at least for me, it was this system was a great way to just get creative. I've always had a creative bone in me, and I just love, like Nick
It
said, we
actively
just
asks
make
you.
stuff.
It's like it actively says like when you can't think of something, just again like the worst I as a GM in this system can say is no, but most often they'll say like yes, but maybe require a requirement or something. But it's like it allows you to be like, here's how do you want to see the situation go? How do you want this story to progress? It isn't just like, oh, you didn't meet this number. You can't do anything.
It's like you failed, but you have these advantages, or you got this narrative triumph, so you fail. But what would you like to put or introduce into the story to kind of
Again,
change
the
it?
worst thing that the DM can say is no, but most often, and maybe we'll get this into future episodes, but I'm always the opinion as a GM. Unless you know it's a hard no, like it just wouldn't work for the story. It's usually a yes, but
Or even a no, but
yeah,
no, you can't do that, but you can do this.
yes, but you also have to do this to accomplish it.
Or, of course, the
Does-
dreaded,
does-
I can't believe you've done this to me.
Oh no, the dreaded.
The dreaded
I run
miniature
it-
story.
I run into a room and scream into a pillow.
Yes.
It's only happened a few times,
But it's happened.
more than once. Yes.
Yes.
More than once. Less times than I had to come back up with a bottle of something.
Again, stories for another day.
Yes. But I think that we have waxed on for quite a while about what we love about this system. Is there anything else that we wanted to hit on?
The system is not over. As we said, Ed Studios is currently working on reprints of both the dice and the books.
And the last, granted, it has been a year and a half since I heard this, but a year and a half ago, Sam Gregor Stewart, the RPG manager for Edge Studio, was asked in an interview about new material for Star Wars. He said it is in development, but because of how Lucasfilm's licensing works, it's very slow going. So it's been quite a while since the transition from FFG to Edge, and for those who aren't aware, they're both imprints of the same parent company, Asmodee.
Yeah.
So it was just a corporate restructure. But they haven't produced anything new in quite a while. They haven't announced anything new in quite a
But
while.
they are in the process
wait.
of bringing stuff back to shelves.
Yeah, they're getting reprints back out.
The
Dice are
dice are
back in
coming back.
production.
Oh yeah.
And
So the system is not dead, but it's definitely on sort of it's working back on coming back.
It's on a bit of hiatus, and there's always rumors about, oh, the system is dead. Oh, the license is going to go to somebody else. That hasn't happened at this point. Lucasfilm tends to pretty well stay with a licensee
Especially
unless,
when the content's doing good.
yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll be seeing something in the near future. I know
Of
that
new content.
I know from talking to Sam that they are unable to even announce anything
Yeah,
new
NDAs and stuff like that.
until it reaches a certain point in the development process. And basically that's the point where they are sending the files to the printer.
Yeah. But the main
Where-
thing is, like, if this was like a year ago, you would have a hard time finding books and dice at a reasonable price. But
and
now they're
now-
coming back
Now
into
they're coming back.
like your friendly local game store.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I feel like this is maybe a bit too late for Christmas lists, but
Well,
at least check it out.
especially,
Well,
especially
my family
considering
just
we're
came out of
going to be
ours.
releasing this episode on New Year's.
That's true.
No, true. Very much true.
But it's more likely than now that you'll be able to find these books and dice to engage in this system.
Yeah, and I heartily recommend the starter games, the beginner game sets for
come
all
with
three
dice.
lines. They come with dice. They come with great adventures. Personally, I'm partial to the Edge of the Empire beginner game.
Oh, that's a
That-
great one. That's a great one.
That seems to be of the ones that
There.
I've played all of them. I've run Edge of the Empire, and I think
the only one I
Rebellion.
haven't. I think the only one I haven't run, but I did own, was the Force Awakens beginner set.
but
that does have a great galaxy map. Great galaxy
Right.
map.
Of all of them that I've played or run, I'm really partial to Edge of the Empire because it's the one that seems to engage people the most.
It gets them a ship. It's a fun one. I've run it at least 2 times, and one of them actually spun out into like a full ass campaign.
And
Yeah.
that's what those starter sets usually do. You either play it once or you use it as the base to create your campaign.
Yeah, but they're great beginner games. They're some of the best beginner games that I've ever.
Come with
Right.
dice. Great character designs.
And
Full maps and stuff like that.
and follow up mini adventures online at the Edge Studio
For free.
website for download for free.
Exactly.
Additional PCs, pre-gen PCs for download on
Character
for free on-
sheets for printable.
So they're great beginner games, and
You can get anyone involved. So, like, even if you're like completely out of your depth, like, you can like start a game with friends instantly.
yeah, ready to go, and great bargain for the price given the dice that you get in them. But it's a great system. Can't say enough about it without starting to repeat myself.
Same here.
I will add one more thing. If you are a little worried about making your characters, there's this beautiful thing that you can find online called Dude Star Wars Character Generator. and it
Yes.
will aid you in making your character. And there's even a part of it that we GMs use to make our own enemies and adversaries ourselves.
And if you would like to download a little shameless self-promotion here, on my homebrew website, myswrpg.com, I have a link to Ogdude's character generator to
And he's
download.
got some nice entries himself.
Yes. I've used them for several of my enemies as well, or at least modified them too.
You want to know how to use a lightsaber gun? He's got one.
Yeah.
Yes, I sure do. Um,
I think I helped you homebrew that one a bit. Yeah.
yeah, I think you helped me with a little bit of the tweaks. I already had most of it done, but then I ran a couple of ideas by you, and you're like, "Oh, try this," and it made perfect sense.
But yeah, like I think that
All right.
just the worst you can do is like give it a shot for yourselves.
Yeah, that's the same with any game that we're going to talk about on this podcast. If it sounds interesting, give it a shot. Worst that happens is you've had a couple of hours of a game that you played and didn't quite work for you.
A little pearl of wisdom, I'll just say at the end is, if you're on foot, don't try to fight a vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, I have one final pearl of wisdom: fall damage.
Oh, yes, very much. This is the one antithesis. You see characters fall all the time in the movies, and they're fine. You fall in the game, you're not going to be fine.
Yeah, it's
Fall damage is kind of unforgiving.
Yes, but I think that's putting a button on our first episode.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
So I hope you've all found some useful information. Mostly this first one was just us wanting to share this game that we love that brought us together.
Yeah.
Next time, we are going to be examining the topic of making the transition from a player to a GM. Because it happens. Most GMs don't start off as GMs. They start off as a player and they make that transition. And
I think we all have our origin story.
We
Yeah.
all do. Yeah.
and it can be a daunting prospect, but it can also be a lot of fun. So we'll be taking a look at that and some tips to hopefully make that transition easier and make it successful for you as a
Yeah.
GM. In the meantime, feel free to check out our website at howwerollgaming.com. And like I said at the top, if you want to drop us a line at podcast@howwerollgaming.com, we'd be glad to hear feedback from you and suggestions for what you'd like to hear in the future.
And be sure to listen to our other affiliated podcasts that we're doing, such as Clone Watts.
Our sister podcast, Casual Nerdity, the first 10 and counting episodes are for Nick and I, rewatching, and for our group member Lauren, watching for the first time the Clone Wars animated series. So check it out at the Casual Nerdity podcast, wherever you find your podcasts.
And I think this is a good point where we will sign out. This is Nick.
And this is Robert.
And this is Daryl, and this is How We Roll.